The women I'm mostly admiring are living in their own body for their own reasons. I get to be selfish. I get to orient to myself and what's good for me, because what I know in my DNA is when I do that, everybody else benefits. No matter where I am, there's always somebody wealthier than me. There's always somebody with less money than me, right? But it's this kind of comparison thing I do where I'm always looking above me to see who's got more, so I never get to rest. I'm moving into this phase of selfishness, and she wanted to rephrase it. She goes, well, we could just say self-focus. I'm like, you can say self-focus. I'm going to say selfish. Like, I'm reclaiming that word.
Welcome to the Old Chicks No Shit podcast for midlife women who are ready to rewrite the rules and create their kick-ass next chapter. I'm Jennifer Arthurton, and each episode we dive into reinvention, resilience, and unapologetic pursuit of your best chapter yet. Because midlife is not the beginning of the end. It's simply a new beginning. Let's dive in. Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Old Chicks No Shit podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Arthurton. And as usual, we're going to be talking about rewriting the rules of midlife and creating your best chapter yet. And today, this is a topic near and dear to my heart because I have lived it, am still living it, and learning. And we're going to be talking about enoughness as being the driver behind so much of what we do, how we show up in our lives, how we show up in our relationships, all driven by the fact that often we feel like we're not enough, like we have to prove ourselves in some way. We have to look a certain way. We have to be a certain weight. We have to have a certain body type, all of these things that are constantly playing in the back of our minds. And we live in a culture that has a hyper focus on women and everything they do, they say, and how they look. And so it's no wonder that so many of us are walking around with this not enoughness wound. So today, my guest is Barbara Burgess, who is the brilliant mind behind the book Enough. And this is really the guide for anybody who wants to stop hustling, stop proving themselves, and just live with a sense of peace and comfort in their life, like really enjoy their lives. So welcome, Barbara.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm very excited.
As I mentioned to you just before we hopped on, I loved this book so much because although it's very aligned with everything that I talk about here on this show, it was, for me, again, the message that I needed to hear, because it's so easy for us to slip into that not enoughness trap.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, and ditto. I said to Jennifer before we started, it's what I think I wrote it so that I could keep hearing it.
Right. I know, because as we were saying, this is a message that you cannot hear enough.
Yeah.
Like you will never be.
Somebody could have it constantly playing in our ears and we would still want more.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me a little bit about your own journey with enoughness and like what prompted you to write this book now?
Yeah, I think, first of all, it was never the plan, for all the things that we do in life that are like, then I'm going to do this, then this was not on the docket. Not that I didn't think someday I might write something, but I had left a job that I had been with for over 2 decades and had started my own business, which was wild in and of itself because I just had never pictured myself doing that, right? I hadn't seen that. I had a stereotype about what an entrepreneur looks like, and it wasn't me. And so, but in the journey of that, as I made that break, I just found that there were these tiny spaces of possibilities beyond what I had ever thought or imagined, right? I think so much in our lives we're in this mindset of, and you said it beautifully about, particularly for women, of just stepping into the frameworks that exist, right? Like there's a certain framework about how you're supposed to look, a certain framework about how we're supposed to go about our career, a certain framework, et cetera. And for me, when all of a sudden that framework shifted, different possibilities opened up. And what happened was actually just real life experience. And so, I kick off the book with this story of this chalk experience, which continues to this day, because my outside sidewalk right now is covered in chalk drawings. But it was this profound experience of putting chalk out, writing, please write, chalk, or draw, and this avalanche of beauty that framed my sidewalk for now years. Like we're probably in our 3rd year. Oh, wow. But the first time I had done that, and again, this was me cleaning something out, right? Like I had an old set of chalk from when my kids were little and a jar that was gathering dust. This was not like, oh, I have this great idea of something I'm going to do. So it's literally like I was putting stuff out that I no longer needed, but I thought, might be useful. And it was a little boy chalking on my front sidewalk that created an amazing experience of enough for me in a way I hadn't anticipated, hadn't seen. And it was, he had stopped his parent as they were walking by, and I'm sitting on my porch, but they couldn't see me. And I hear him, sort of begging to stop and use the chalk. And the parent, as I would as a busy parent, was kind of like, oh, I guess, all right. And I'm imagining this whole time because I can't see what they're doing, but you hear the beauty of this, literally like music of the two of them talking. First, him to himself, like, oh, just, a little more blue here, a little bit more of this. Like he is having this gorgeous rhythmic conversation. And then, his parent who eventually kind of surrendered. And then, they're sharing like, oh, that looks great. Oh, look at that. It was literally music. And so it's finally quiet and nobody's down there on the front sidewalk. And I'm expecting to, I have kids, so I'm expecting to go down and see a scribble that only a parent can appreciate. He sounded young. And so as soon as I thought the coast was clear, I popped down the stairs and I had kicked it off by drawing some like colorful circles, like, just to, encourage people. This little boy had put like rings around my circles, turned them into planets, put stars in the skies. Like it was the most beautiful thing I had seen. And I literally, like, I can still feel it now. I was stopped in my tracks. I like kind of couldn't move. I'm just staring down at this beauty that he had created. And I just had this felt sense that, really physically inside my body that felt very real, very deep, very old, and very beautiful. And it was this, what I would call a sense of enough. Here was this thing that didn't cost money, that was not an agenda, that wasn't part of the plan, where I had just thrown something out and this young boy had made beauty. And I'm somebody who, like, I love space. I love all the things about it. I remember when I first saw, pictures from outer space and how they look like artwork. And it struck me like that. And so it began this journey of these small moments that I feel like probably were there all along, but I had never noticed. And I had never probably allowed myself to be so filled by, in these meaningful ways in the process of everything else. And so that felt experience of enough. And I literally say it, if you read the book, they're both characters, enough and not enough for characters. Like she came into my life and like kind of wouldn't leave me alone in the most beautiful way. So the book kind of started writing itself from that moment.
Interesting. Like it seems like a rather random connection between this drawing on the street and, this sense of enoughness that you feel. Like what was going on inside you at that particular moment that do you think caused you to feel that so viscerally, like that sense of enoughness?
I think a big contributing factor was this change in paradigm in life and lifestyle. Again, I'm going to go back to this framework of thinking. And again, you said it well, thinking, well, as a woman, I need to. Well, as an executive, I need to. Like there's all these rules and we rarely take the moment to write them out and define them. Like we're literally playing games that we know the rules to, but we've never articulated, right? And we're unconsciously playing them. And so this break from that, even though I was starting a business and I had plenty of work to do and it was enough lift in all of its own ways, but there was a break in my mindset about how it's supposed to be, how it should be, how I'm supposed to be, who I am. I think, I talk about like cracks in the sidewalk. I think there were cracks in my sidewalk of my own identity and what I was doing in a way that invited new opportunities. And I think that was the priming that allowed me to do that. Now, I will say now in my life, I do that much more actively. I create those cracks where at the beginning, they were kind of happening to me, but I intentionally do that. I'm much more skeptical about how it's supposed to be and what that looks like. Because again, I think the frameworks are for us to always feel like we're not enough. I don't think that's accidental. I don't think it's some weird thing that women still struggle with imposter syndrome. No, our world's designed so that we can consume and work and give ourselves over because of that framework. And I believe it's really incredibly revolutionary and radical to say, no, thank you, I'll pass.
Yeah. It is an act of rebellion. Like for a
Yeah.
woman to be enough and to feel enough, like to
Yeah.
feel that full sense of enoughness where she needs nothing from anybody, to validate her or anything, is an act of rebellion.
Yeah. Well, and I even think about, I'm a later in life mom. And so I have a 16-year-old and 14-year-old. And particularly for my daughter, I'll give you a very concrete example of recent life for women is really even marriage and understanding how that framework is set up. I'm not saying people shouldn't be married. I'm just saying the framework is not set up to empower women. So what I was thinking about is when she's old enough to launch on her own, right? The way our normal society goes, at least in the US, is if somebody gets engaged, and they're going to get married, you have a shower and then they register for the things they want and you bring them gifts with this idea to launch themselves into their life with something. Okay, the idea of launching young people into their lives with resources is lovely, but why does the girl have to marry the boy in order for us to launch her? Right? That is not enough moment. She needs the man in order for the community to come around, rally, support, and give those things. So I have said to my girlfriends who are my age, I said, listen, when my daughter's of age, I'm throwing her a shower before she's ever engaged or married because I want to launch my kid out in the world with a furnished apartment or whatever she needs that doesn't require her then to depend on anybody or anything to do that. Why is that rule there, right?
Gosh.
I would never have thought about that had enough not come into my life. Had I, this thing that seems so seemingly obvious of that sense that just as I am, I'm magnificent and divine, it makes me rethink all these paradigms that are so woven into the fabric of our being and our systems.
Wow, I had never thought about it like that. I mean, you know, it never ceases to amaze me the ways that we come up with in our society to make women feel not enough.
Yeah.
And the one, as I was scrolling last night on social media, there is a plastic surgeon talking about labia puffing. Because, God forbid our labia should be flat or not looking like.
I mean, what a horrible crime.
Right. And I was just like, I was literally gobsmacked by that because I'm like, literally, is there any part of a woman's body that is like literally just hers, that it has to be fixed or changed or manipulated or tweaked to make somebody else happy? I mean, there are 3 people down there, your partner, you, and maybe your gynecologist. Like,
yes.
If any one of those people cares, you like new relationships, new gyno, new partner. Like I am, and I was thinking about our conversation today and I was thinking about it and I'm like, yeah, this is just like one more thing.
There's one more thing and there will always be one more thing, right? And again, to realize like the women as I move into this next season and next season and next season, the women I'm mostly admiring are those people who are, you can tell when they are living in their own body for their own reasons. Like even people that would have women that would have offended me before because maybe they say something to me or I ask a question and they're kind of short or they're not extra nice. I now feel very admiring of them. I'm like, that woman felt no need to please me beyond answering my question. And I think it's like fantastic where I might have been offended because even my unconscious mind would have thought, well, why wasn't she nicer? And I thought, she has no obligation to be nicer. I've never had the obligation for any of the men in my life to be nice in a different way, right? And I don't mean civil. Yeah. I mean, there's this expectation again that you're softer, sweeter, kinder, nicer, that you don't go for what you want, that you're not as radical in saying it. And I was thinking it was somebody I was following, and I can't think of who it is right now, but somebody had said to them, you look fantastic. And she said, I know. And I was like, oh, yes, 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 right? Because I'm not here to live for you to recognize my body and your approval of it. Yeah. And she was owning it. She was taking back that power. And I thought, dang, that's what it looks like. But it's so woven in, right? In these really unconscious ways that we don't notice.
So true. I mean, women like women being pit against each other, like that is all part of that unconscious bias that we are literally, from the minute we set foot on this planet, that's
Yes.
the programming starts, right? And
Yep.
there it is,
Yep.
weaving itself unconsciously into literally everything that we do.
Well, and I think that's what, as you know, as we lean into this allowing of this sense of very sweet enoughness, like for me, this enoughness is a very enfolding feminine force. But as I lean more into that, I'm bolder is the irony, right?
Right.
It's easier for me to make the decisions that work for me and to not make decisions that don't work for me. You know, it's interesting that these two things we might have decoupled before are very intimately related.
Yeah.
Like I can say, no, thank you, my labia will not be puffed. I can say, you're hilarious that you even think that's something someone should consider,
Yeah.
you know? But all the little things, right? And I think, again, the opportunity we have as women is to claim that back.
Yeah.
And it is subtle and it's tiny and it's small. Going back to what you said, it's interesting. These little micro moments like chalk on my sidewalk could be the thing.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes, you know, because these other voices are so loud, the ads are so loud about everything we need to change, it's literally like we can't hear the whispers. And for me, enough in my life is whispering. She's not screaming, right? And not enough. He's screaming often. You know, who do you think you are? What about Bo? Look at them over there. You know, they can do it better. That's noisy, right? And I need to turn down that volume so I can hear her voice. But when I hear her voice, holy cow, am I empowered?
Yeah. So how do you describe enoughness?
Yeah, I think to me it's very personal, you know? So my description would probably be different than yours, is probably different than someone else's. And I even say, you know, I might describe it as enoughness. Somebody else might describe it as worthiness. Somebody else might describe it as value, like whatever words work.
Right.
But for me personally, it is this physical sensation I have that comes over me where I'm not anxious, I'm not comparing, I'm not proving myself, I'm not, you know, so it's a lot of the nots, but it is this kind of physical sense of immediate peace. And I don't mean peace in the way that like life is hard. There's a lot of stuff we're juggling all the time. We still got to pay the bills. We got to raise the kids. We got to, you know, go out there or not raise the kids. We got to make political stands. There's all these things we need to do. I don't mean that those are going to go smoothly and easily. It's quite the opposite, right? But there are these moments where I just get to say, I don't have to listen to that ad. I get to just be with myself. I get to have a kind inner voice that says, hey, way to go. Or, hey, yeah, you get to take a nap right now. Hey, and this has been my big mind shift of the last few months is knowing what you always talk about what you can and should do and blah, 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 blah. But this what do I get to do? Yeah. Well, I get to go achieve something and I get to not achieve it. Like those are options on my plate. And being in that enough space is where it opens up all those possibilities. It's literally like I go from this narrow framework of kind of running through the ruts I always have to this open field of possibilities. I get to change my mind. Somebody might have invited me to something I was supposed to go, and all of a sudden I don't feel like going. I get to do that. Yeah. That's what that sense of enoughness is. So it's this really interesting combination of, for me, a felt sense of sweet enfolding okayness. There's not scramble in it, but that also leads me to kind of break the rules and make choices that are really, you know, I said this to my therapist recently. I said, I'm moving into this phase of selfishness. And she wanted to rephrase it. She goes, well, we could just say self-focus. I'm like, you can say self-focus. I'm going to say selfish. Like I'm reclaiming that word. I get to be selfish. I get to orient to myself and what's good for me. Yeah. Because what I know in my DNA is when I do that, everybody else benefits. And when I'm sacrificing and I'm giving up and I'm playing the games and I'm doing all that kind of thing, like, no. There's no overflowing cup here to be present to anybody anyway.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I did a little social media clip on this. Last week, I was walking into the gym and I was walking in behind this girl who was probably in her 20s. And everything about her was perfect, perky, right? Like the perky butt, the perky ponytail, like literally. And I caught myself in this moment of comparing myself to her. And you talk a lot about comparison and the latter. And we'll get to that in this book. but the process that my brain went through. So first it was just like this, oh my goodness, look at, wow, I'll never look like that. I'll never, blah, blah, blah. Why isn't my body, blah, blah, blah. And then I caught myself going like, wait a minute, like, what am I doing? Right. First of all,
Yep.
I'm old enough to be her mother. I could well be her grandmother. Right.
Right. Right.
Two, I am strong and fit and healthy, and I am so grateful for my body.
Yeah.
And three, if my fairy godmother came down and said, I will give you that perky everything, but you got to trade all of your wisdom and life experience for that, would I say
No
yes?
can do.
I'd be like, hell no. I don't want to go back to my 20s.
No.
And you know what? Like, there was a time where that comparison would have started a spiral that would have had me beat myself up for my entire workout and tell myself all the reasons why I'm not enough and will never look like that, to this point where I was like, I am so proud to be me. And I went in there and I crushed my workout. And I was just like, oh, like this. And that actually landed for me. I'm like, yeah, this is exactly what you talk about in the book, that moment of enoughness, where I am like so happy to be me in my skin exactly as I am right now.
Well, and I think we're habituated. Like for me, again, that comparison thing is just, I just know personally it's so dangerous.
Yeah.
Because to your point of where I might have gone in my version of it, afterward, I would have been down, wouldn't have done as well, would have spent the whole day criticizing myself, maybe even a couple days. Like the implications of what would have happened had I started down that thing would have been terrible, right? And to see that that's an option and there are other options, that to me is that enoughness, right? To say, oh, I know how to do that. That is what my habit is. Like that's the neural superhighway that has been paved since birth, because we see those pictures on TV and because you naturally compare and because there's a certain kind of beauty and all those kinds of things. So it is literally like a neural highway. Like I could go down there. Oh my gosh, but there's this other branch, which is what you picked, which I love, that was like, I rock, I'm really great. And not in a mindless kind of way, but in a really thoughtful way. And I do that same thing to your point. Like, would I trade the wisdom I have right now? I'm like, hell no. I mean, I feel for my kids because you couldn't pay me enough money to be a teen again. Like, I don't deal with peer pressure like they do. No. I'm sitting out here doing whatever the heck I want through my business and my book and everything and loving it. Yeah. Like, ugh.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the comparison ladder? Because I found that fascinating.
Well, it's this visual that popped in my mind of realizing, and it came out of a few life instances, but the metaphor is, imagine that there's a ladder that's feet are on the earth, and every person gets to stand on one rung of that rung of the ladder, and it stretches for as far as your eye can see. And so let's pretend, for example, it's like, who's the wealthiest, right? We would place ourselves somewhere in all the, billions of people on the planet, somewhere on that rung. And what happens, because this is what my mind unconsciously does, I get on that rung and no matter where I am, there's always somebody wealthier than me. There's always somebody with less money than me, right? But it's this kind of comparison thing I do where I'm always looking above me to see who's got more. So I never get to rest. I never get to enjoy what I have because I'm on that ladder looking up to climb up to the next rung, right? And so I was thinking about this metaphor, and I have a family member who had come into money that was like the size of an amazing lottery jackpot. And they had said to me in all confidence, they said, listen, I know, they know I'm a straight talker. They're like, I'm embarrassed to even say this, but in the circles we're hanging out with right now, we're poor. And I'm telling you, like you and I would be over the moon with this level of money. And I thought, oh my God, there it is, right? It does not matter where you arrive, because now they just moved up to a whole nother section of the ladder that's way higher up. And in that section, there's so many other people, right? And even if you're at the top of the money ladder, the truth is that doesn't mean you're at the top of love ladder or relationships ladder or beauty ladder or anything like that. And one little, breeze could knock you off that to somewhere else. But this is how my brain was orienting. Yeah. And I'm like, there it is, right? And so as these concepts were living within me, as enough was beginning to move into my life and things like that, I was working with like, what is this and what do I do about it? And the only answer was get off the damn ladder. Like there is nowhere on that ladder that I'm served, because on that ladder, I either feel inferior to someone above me or superior to somebody below me, which neither of which leaves me feeling filled and kind and all that kind of stuff. But if I catch it and I just get off of it, I'm done. I don't have to spend my energy doing any of that. Like, what a waste of energy.
Yeah. And a lot of what you talk about in the book is this idea of us being in constant doing mode in order to feel enough. Like,
Yeah.
again, I think it's one of these things that was, put into our programming when we were kids, right? And it's about work hard, do more, achievement, like that equals success. When you're successful, you'll feel good, like doors will open, all of these things. And then we get on that trap. Like we literally are like doing, and I mean, I remember like in my career, you know, achieving levels of success that I thought that I wanted, and then not feeling the way that I thought I was going to feel. So my answer
Yes.
to that was, oh, I have to go a little farther. I have to do a little more. I just have to keep pushing a bit, and then I'll feel what I want to feel. And I think this is exactly your latter thing, right? It's like, but I
Yep.
will never feel what I want to feel while I keep doing this thing. Like I will never feel like enough. I will never feel like I've arrived, that I'm successful enough, right?
Well, and if you listen to any of the really successful people, celebrities, it's all that kind of stuff, they will tell you that very directly, right? There's a guy that helped me create my audiobook, and he happened to have a life where he was around a lot of celebrity. He's like, it's still true. Like you could have the most money, get the biggest gigs in Hollywood, all those kinds of things, and you still are going to be in that other place, right? And so given that that's the case, and given the fact that, like, to your point, we're so wired to do that achieving so that we feel enough, this radical experience of having a sense of enough without it was really mind-blowing to me, right? Like this
Right.
sense of I could compare like that, or I could be at peace inside myself, and really understanding that's a direct choice that we get to make is the thing I didn't think was possible. Like I just didn't even see that paradigm. The paradigm to me was exactly what you're describing. The next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And if you've solved it in career, well, then solve it in your body, and then solve it as if there's a problem, right? And this was the other thing I had to come to terms with is like I have these purported values, but none of that is living that purported value. My purported values are everybody's unique, a beautiful gift from, source on the planet in all the ways that we are, but comparison isn't honoring that, right?
No.
So to catch ourselves in that doing, achieving, et cetera, and it might not be career. Like, I'm sorry, the mom's bringing the brownies to the kids' school event. It can be just as bad. Like,
Yeah.
oh, are yours homemade? Do they have the right ingredients? Like, what does that look like? Oh, is your house cuter? Is that like, there's just always something there that you could step into. And the interesting thing again for me is I found out as for my own experience, as I let go of that, it wasn't like I actually did kind of more. And I don't mean it in an achievement way, but like in a short period of time, I wrote this book and put it out. I wrote and performed a one-woman show. I launched my business, but these weren't driving, achieving things. It was like joy and delight in creating things,
Yeah.
which was completely the opposite of how I thought it would work.
Yeah, I think that's been one of the biggest learnings on my journey as well, too, is like, trying to achieve something from the place of not enoughness versus trying to achieve something from the pure joy of wanting to create it. Right.
Yes.
Or having a vision of something that I wanted to create and being excited about that, as opposed to proving that I'm enough. Like, night and day difference in the energy that you get. And
Yes.
I'm like a huge proponent of energy, and the energy that you bring to something matters, right? And
Yep.
not enoughness comes from a place of scarcity. And having a vision or doing something for the pure joy of creativity is creativity. It's expansive,
Yes.
right?
And I think that expansive versus contracting is a really good felt sense of that energy, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I just keep seeing in my mind's eye, like where the playing field opens up, where I can. And to your point, what I find now in my life, and I really believe this is so important for all of us as women, is, we get to create a lot of things and they don't have to quote unquote work from the old achievement measurement sticks. Like that's what comparison is for me. Like all these things are finding one more way to compare, to measure whether it's successful or not. No. You just get to birth it all. I get to write a crappy play in addition to a great one. I get to write bad poetry in addition to great one. Like, who's to say? Because I think the divine act is in feeling our enoughness such that we do get to put out whatever that is, whatever thoughts we have, whatever we're led to. And it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks about it. It doesn't matter if it gets an award. It doesn't matter if it sells anything. That's an old mindset, right? It matters that I thought of it and did it, and that I honored myself enough to make that creation happen, I think is the most important thing.
Oh, I have goosebumps and like tears are forming because, and I call these the tears of truth, because when somebody speaks truth, like you just spoke, like it doesn't, like you put it out into the world. That's the end of your job. That's it. Right.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks about it. If it's successful, if it makes money, if it doesn't make money, it just doesn't.
It doesn't. And I think when we do that, like as women, if we could really lean into that, I've always had a really mixed relationship with being entitled. Like I've worked with a lot of entitled men that disgusted me because they would use that in an ill way. But I think women almost need to reclaim that entitlement. And it is being entitled that like we just get to put the stuff out, right? It doesn't have to have the purpose, because that level of entitlement, just imagine the people that we know in our lives, you and I, if we just took our group of women that we know and they were all doing these kinds of things, like what is possible? This morning I joined a friend of mine she does Reiki and energy healing. And she did these meditations. She's doing these free 15-minute meditations. And I usually can't make them. And this morning I could while I was on my walk. I felt so filled up afterward. And I literally had emailed her afterward. And I was like, listen, when are you going to do like the collection of them that I can buy? Because I want to pay for that. And I want to have them downloaded on my phone to be able to listen to, because that's how much of a gift that was. Like, I love that you gave that to me free today. But this is something, it's not like 5 years ago, that would have been the logical plan in her career pathing at all, right? This is a woman who is an, editor, did a bunch of other things in her life. But as she's given herself permission to play out in the world, this is what's come. I benefited from that today. The rest of my morning was great because she did this. That's not like something I had in my plan. It's just that here's this woman giving her natural gift, and I could listen to her voice all day long.
Oh, I love that, like permission to play. Oh. So how do you rationalize personal development and ambition with enoughness?
Well, I talk about this in the book, as you well know.
I'm asking this question for myself because I am constantly asking myself this question, because like I love growing. I love learning. Like, you know what I mean? I want to be all that I can be, and I want to, create at the highest levels. But I ask myself this question all the time, like, what's driving this?
Yes. And I think that is the key question right there. And in the book, I have a subtitle that says change is an option, not an imperative. And to me, that's the difference, right? What is driving this? So I get to read 1,000 books. I get to attend 1,000,000 workshops. I get to discover something new, and I don't have to, right? It is an option for me to explore. And what I have found with my sense of enoughness is I have developed such a stronger internal GPS. I've always been somebody that's intuitive, that has hunches about things, that follows things, but that muscle of turning inward and really knowing whether or not something's aligned or not has just developed significantly over the last couple of years. And so to your point, before that, for my personal development, what was driving me, was the sense of not enough. Oh, I need to be more conscious. I need to be more aware. I need to be a better contributor to the world. I need, right? All that nonsense. That's what was driving me. Now, if I choose to tune into a podcast, a book, listen to something, it's out of a very different perspective. It's like, that excites me, that interests me, that resonates with my energy. It amplifies my energy versus constricting it. Therefore, I'm going to follow that path, right? So I have gotten better at seeing what those things are, because I think otherwise personal development becomes its own measuring stick that we're not enough in. there is always one more thing to take, one more new idea that's out. I often will have people, particularly there's some books out right now like, oh my gosh, did you read this other book? Is that what informed this book? Da 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 da. You should read this book. And I'm like, nope, I didn't. And I might put it on my list if it feels resonant, but it could be the most popular thing everybody's reading. And I'm like, yeah, no, nothing about that sounds like I feel like reading it now. I reserve the right to read it later if I feel like it. But right now, just if I feel my energy and I feel my sense, it doesn't feel resonant. So thanks. Nope.
Yeah, I was having this conversation actually with a friend earlier today about I was talking about the gifts of each decade of my life has been me. And the true gift of my 50s has been exactly what you just talked about, was that ability to tune in and really get in touch with, like, how is my energy feeling? Is this a yes or a no? Like, what does this feel like in my body? Because prior to my 50s, like, I was very detached from my body. Like, my body was the thing that came around my head. Right. And other than trying to manipulate it into some shape, size, or form, right, I had no relationship with it.
Yes. Amen.
And my 50s gave me back, well, if I ever had, I'm not sure I actually ever had that relationship with my body, but it gave me that relationship with my body that allows me to be able to tune into, exactly what you just talked about. How does this feel to me right now?
Yes. Well, and I will say, so I teach emotional intelligence, but for me, what matters the most about emotional intelligence that isn't, God bless Daniel Goleman, isn't what his book was originally about. It's embodied. It is in your physical, piece. And ditto to you, like, I spent my first 4+ decades out of my body. And what I think is our bodies, for women in particular, probably for all of us, are such wisdom generators, but we are taught out of the sense of not enough to detach, to not pay attention, to ignore the longings, the desires, whatever it is. And so we get the opportunity, as we decide to get back in it. And when I'm teaching emotional intelligence, it's literally that. So, I will have people pay attention to, and I know you've had this experience, we all have, you're sitting in a business meeting and somebody's smiling and saying something and your gut is just clutching. It's like, oh, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right. And people will dismiss it like, well, intuition, like it's this soft thing. No, the more science that we learn and the research about it, what they're discovering is that our body gets informed before our brain.
100%.
So, again, if they hook us up to a monitor, decisions we make show up in our brain cognition in our body 2 to 7 seconds before we're aware of it. And so the fact is, it's not like we're doing some soft, fuzzy thing. Our body is taking in data, whether that's visual, sensorial, or energetic. It is feeding us millions of bits of data, and it's informing us of decisions. But because we can't logic it, or it doesn't make sense with the framework of that business meeting or that corporation or whatever we're in, we have dismissed it. And I think, to your point, part of this decade, although I'm going to say to our young women listening, start it in your 20s. No need to wait.
Start now.
Please, you'll be in better shape and make the planet a better place. But we get to really now pay attention deeply and say, and again, when I'm teaching this in a coursework, I teach people to make their own dictionary or thesaurus. Oh, so when I start to get flush or my heart starts beating fast or like these physical sensations, what does that mean for me? Right. And I get to pay attention to them. Sometimes we're angry and we don't know why. We get to hold that as valid data. We don't have to have a cognitive, logical reason why. We just get to say, there is something off. I don't know yet what it is, but I know it's off because my body is telling me it's off, and I get to follow that, right? And so I think, to this point, is that opportunity, that privilege to step into these bodies as the wisdom generators that they are. Then it helps us know what's aligned and what's not aligned. And that isn't like, what might be aligned for you might not be aligned for me. That's okay. We get to make those sorts.
But that also requires you to have a deep sense of trust in your own self, right? Which, when you come from a place of always striving and pushing and proving to be enough, like for most people, and I think this was true for me, I think you've never learned how to actually trust, because there's always something outside of you that's pushing you, right, that you have to measure up to. And so it doesn't, almost like we were talking about, you're disconnected from what's happening here. And so through that disconnection, so how do you learn to trust, that your body, like that wisdom that comes from inside you if you've been disconnected and been playing in the not enoughness space.
Yeah. And to me, it's a muscle, right?
Yeah.
And the way to do it is you make it a whole playground exercise. And I'll give you a very concrete example. So when my kids were little, I needed breaks, and I called these mommy getaways, and I would go and I would just take like a weekend away at a cabin. And the idea was to relax and renew, be alone, not have any responsibilities in addition to work. I was still a COO at the time. But I had a hard time doing it. I was like, I felt the pressure to rest as well as possible before I got back. It was one more big to do. I was failing, right? Because I didn't even know how to relax into myself. And so what I started doing is I would take this like old fashioned notepad of paper, and I would write down everything I could do while I'm there. I get to, go for a walk along the beach. I get to make food. I get to zone out. I get to binge watch Netflix. I would fill the paper. And so what I did was like, I was my own greatest experiment. So I would, Friday night, I'd get in, I'd unload my stuff, and I would look at the notepad and say, what delights me? What feels right this second in this micro moment? What feels like it would delight me? And then I would do it for a little bit. And then if I got bored, I got to stop. And it including the fact, like I might feel like making food, and then it's half done and I'm done. And I get to walk away from it, right? So I started this practice of learning to tune into myself. But in order to do that, it can't be one more thing we have to pass. It can't have the outside result, right? It's more of I get to feel what brings me joy and what doesn't. And that may change moment by moment. And I think the exercise of paying attention to that, like literally for women, we need to give ourselves time to say, I'm going to go spend a couple hours, and it might be quote unquote great or terrible, but I'm just going to follow myself. And I do this all the time now. I live in Chicago, and I might go into the city and I have no agenda. And the agenda is whatever I feel like moment by moment, right? Which again was not something I was in the habit of doing, but I get to follow myself and see what I like and what I don't like. So I think that's part of that trust building is we first need to experiment and play. And it's not like we're going to find the 5 things that bring us joy. No, we are dynamic, shape-shifting humans, right? And so it's more of tuning into the signal than it is getting a preset list of the stuff we're supposed to do. And I think that's a mythology also. Same thing with finding your purpose. Like, no, I'm creating my purpose every day that I engage on the planet, right? This is not some big old magical statement I'm going to find and land on. I'm changing too much, right? And so I think letting ourselves have the experimentation of doing it over and over and over again, we find that, I mean, at least for me, I discovered like, whoa, she's good. This physicality, man, she's got something going on. I had no idea, right? Because I get to open up that pipeline again. But I think we first have to give ourselves permission to experiment and play.
I love that. I love the creating of I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to do that for myself today. In fact, I'm going to make a list. Because like, here's an example I was thinking about as you were talking is like, sometimes, I'm working away or whatever, my brain gets tired and I think, oh, I want to have a rest and want to do something else. Right. And then invariably I find myself on my phone scrolling social media. And then 20 minutes goes by and I go, I didn't even want to do this. Like, how did I end up here? This didn't fulfill me. Like, it didn't fill me. I don't feel rested. So you know what? I'm going to create that big list. And I'm just going to leave it there. And when I have a break, I'm going to look at the list and be like, what feels really aligned right now, instead of automatically picking up my phone.
Well, and again, I think even for me with the phone, it's funny because I literally took off 2 social media channels off my phone about 2 weeks ago, just because that one's such a lurker that it does have some good value. Like I have groomed my channels enough that the things I get, I enjoy. But that whole disappearing, like I leave my body then. And so it's lovely for a few minutes, but I was like, I'm going to take some breaks from it because it was sucking me into that and I was no longer present. But even for me, like nature is a big one. If I can just literally walk in my yard, walk around the neighborhood, walk into a store, do, any of those things. But to your point, to have readily available the list of options really, really helps, because in that moment, we just go to the default, which is going to be the easiest thing, which might be clicking on that icon on our phone, but it's not what's going to fill us up.
Right. Exactly. You talk about your path from, the world of corporate to being an author and an entrepreneur as a love letter to yourself. which I
Hmm.
loved. Can you talk a little bit about more about that?
Yeah, I think, you know, the more that I learn to honor that sense of enoughness, you know, it again, I'd say the phrase I would use is I get to. And so the love letter to myself is I get to try this thing out. Like it may or may not work the way it's supposed to work, but I get to,
Mm.
venture into this experiment, try these different pieces. And what I have loved about it is, that corporate journey there. And by the way, not that you can't have the same level of joy and whatever at a corporation, but I was past my time where I was supposed to be. I had hung on 10 years longer than I should have hung on. And what was beautiful about making that break is my business now is an umbrella for whatever delights me, right? And so to be able to make that choice and say, under this umbrella, under this umbrella, I get to serve people. Like I love helping. I don't care if you have a super fancy title next to your name or nothing at all. I do executive coaching, I do pro bono coaching. Like I don't care. I love to make a difference. If I can make a difference, great. And I will even like sometimes people, I'll interview with them and I will be straight and honest, like, I don't think I can help you here. I think there's somebody else better over here. Why don't you talk to them? Right. Because it's my own, I get to do that too. I get to walk away from business. I get to walk into business. I get to write a book under this umbrella. I got to do that show last year. So to me, that love letter to myself is honoring that sense of adventure in life, that sense of, what do you want to do, honey? Like I literally think about if I were talking to my 5-year-old self again, and even to your point, like I don't even know if it's going back. It might be starting anew, but to say, what do you feel like? What should we do? Where do you want to go? And it doesn't mean disconnected from the practicalities of paying the bills. Of course, I'm going to do enough that pays to make sure I can do those pieces. But there's loads that I get to do. And somebody was asking me about my business recently. I said, I have no idea next year what it's going to look like. I don't know. That's the cool thing, right? Because my little girl inside there wants to be creative and play and try a bunch of stuff. Whether, again, it works or doesn't work doesn't really matter according to somebody else's standards. And I think that's the big love letter and the big vote is letting myself do that, letting myself be on that adventure, letting myself set my own, I'll say measures of success. And my of success is just creating things that move me. It's not like, oh, somebody else said that worked or didn't work. Like that is the wrong measure of success.
I love this so much because so many of us hold us back from what it is we know that we want for ourselves because of, will it be successful, right?
Yeah.
What will people think of me? Like, what if it fails? Like all of these kinds of and in doing that, we literally talk ourselves out of this. But this idea that I get to honor myself by experimenting with this thing unattached to the outcome, it is so beautiful. And again, like I said, I was reading this book and it was just like this message. And even in this conversation today, like you've said several things where I'm just like, I exhaled a few times because they're just such great reminders, because it's so easy to get caught up in the, well, is it this strategy or that strategy? What's going to make the most money? What's going to do, as opposed to the
Well,
pure
and
joy
and
of
I
doing
think
it.
that other thing that we're so taught and trained in, at least I have found, I've had my business for 3 years now, those actually constrict me. The
Exactly.
more success I have is when I unleash myself, when I allow myself to make mistakes. And I will say, because in coaching, oftentimes I will take people's life stories. And I think the guys have been better about, like, you might have 5 failed ventures and they're going into their 6th without really thinking too much about it. Whereas women were like, oh, I failed at that. I should never have done that. I'll never do it again. Like, no, like what? Like, that's not even how it works. But somehow we
Right.
think that's how it works. And that's part of that needing to double prove ourselves, have it all handled, have no error in it, da da da. Like, let's take those constraints off ourselves. Because when you read interesting stories about people who've quote unquote made it, the ones that again delight me are the ones that are so authentically themselves. Like I've been listening to a lot of comedians lately, and I love a comedian who made it, but like their style is never anything that you would have pictured because nobody else had done it that way. And if they had listened to the advice of here's how you break in, here's how you do it, here's how you, all these kinds of things, like they probably would have not succeeded. And again, a lot of times I had the privilege to volunteer for hospice many, many years ago when I was in my 20s. And it always causes me to do like a fast forward to end of life, end of days.
Mm-mm.
And so I end up going there and looking back, so like I zoom there and then I look backward and go, okay, so what will the regrets be? What will the things be that I wish I would have, could have, blah, 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 blah. And I know for a fact it's not going to be, oh gosh, I wish I would have listened to that authority figure. It's going to be like, girl, why didn't you create that art? Why didn't you try this out? Why didn't you go radically, go speak in front of that group, whether they liked you or not? Like, those are the things that I will wish I had played with versus the others. And I think that helps me for a place of orientation in that way.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. So what do you do when your character of not enoughness shows up, right? Like it's that voice in your head that's like chirping at you. What do you do in that moment?
Well, I will say this is the beauty of having written the book. That has been the biggest gift I could not have known. And I have been, saying this to folks as far as like a first step. What really helped that I didn't know I was doing at the time was really turning not enough into a character. And I think it's so useful, right? Like, again, somebody else I was coaching said theirs is more not worthy versus not enough. I'm like, that's great. But to really give that entity a name, a look, a feel, because I think too often the problem is those voices are so fused with us and our identity that we think that's who we are. So that doubt, that self-doubt, we think is a useful voice that's keeping us from harm. No. That is something we threw in our backpack without being aware of it when we were very young and kept carrying it along, right? So to really pull it out so the fact that I have a character called Not Enough in my life, I can hear him when he starts chattering, and he is not me. Right. So, again, I tell the story in a book where, I'm sitting in my first pair of vegan leather pants and, sitting in a coffee shop and in walks the woman who looks like the Parisian model wearing hers. And I was like, boom, lost it all right there. Like in the micro moment, like, oh my God, what was I thinking? I don't look cute. I just went down that whole road. But the difference is because Not Enough is a character, an entity to me. I'm like, oh, I hear you there, dude. No, thank you. I'm not listening to you. I see that as an option, as if there's a person sitting there called Not Enough to me, and I'm not going to listen to him. So it's not like that voice ever goes away, but I say I've significantly turned the volume down. And I think that's something any of us can do, is literally give it a name, give it a character, and notice that when it's speaking. You're not speaking. It sounds like you because it sounds like it's in your head, but to create some distance, because if we don't have a crack between that thinking and us, we will unconsciously move in patterns. I would have tanked my whole week and day, just like you did with the workout thing in this vegan leather pants comparison, had I not gone, oh, that's not enough speaking. Honey, get off that ladder comparison. Let's just enjoy our tea, shall we? And bless her, she looks great, high tens, right?
Yeah.
But it's because that character is real for me now in a way that I had never anticipated when I first started writing the book.
Yeah, it's so good. I mean, I whether it's fear or not enoughness or whatever, I give mine jobs to do, right? Like it's like
I love it.
Go make me a cup of coffee, or like that file of laundry needs folding. Go over there and do that, right? Like, so it's like physically separating myself and just like occupying it so that I can keep doing what I'm doing here, right? Like
I love that.
I don't need you
I
right
think
now.
that's brilliant. Yes.
Yeah. You talk about boundaries a lot in the book, right? Like the big fat effing no.
Yes.
What, like, no is the hardest thing for a lot of women, right? Like it's no because, or no but, or no, like how do we get comfortable? And I guess this is where where enoughness comes in, is just comfortable saying no without some level of guilt or accommodation as such attached to it.
Well, yeah. And I think for me, of course, I've read things about boundaries. Like there's plenty of great work out there, but I just didn't feel like I could embody it in a significant way. And it wasn't until that sense of enough came to visit more that I felt more entitled, right, to make these other choices. And it did start like, I had gotten good at the big no's. Like if somebody really violated my boundaries or my values, I had learned to like rise to the field and say, that is not okay, right? But was not a problem at that point in my life when I first started writing the book. But where I was drowning was in the small yeses, the not saying the small no's to things like, hey, I have an extra ticket to this event. Will you, are you available? And what I would do automatically is never ask myself, do I want to go? I would look at my calendar to see, am I available? And if I was available, then the answer is yes. Well, that's a little yes, right? That's a little tiny thing that all of a sudden fills up my calendar when I could be doing something else creative, something delightful, something I really want to do. So it was almost automatic and routine. So the first thing I had to start doing was noticing those small yeses that were like crowding out my life, in a major kind of way. And then I started practicing again. I did start practicing saying no with excuses, right? Because that is like we're trained, and I allow myself baby steps towards, making these changes in my life. So it'd be like, no, I've got other plans, no this, no that. But the more I felt a sense of enough, the more I realized, and I say this in the book, it's, beautiful boundaries, zero apologies. The more I realized I don't have to give an excuse for anything. Like I get to live the life exactly as I want, moment by moment. So I can just say no, but thanks. Like that's plenty, right? Now I will say I upset some people with that. Like I have close people who are like, who wanted me to help on something, and if something I've always helped on before, blah, 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 blah. And I said, it's not a fit for me. And they, literally characterized me as like bullying them because I made that choice. And it was like, holy cow. What I realized later is this was a person who is not comfortable with their own boundaries. And so they've got some work to do, right?
Yeah.
So I got better at paying attention to that and saying it without the explanation. And now like the friends that are close to me just know, they just know that that's how I'm going to roll. And I can appreciate other women in particular when they are strong in their choices, because it's something that I would have been offended by before. And now I'm like, I can't wait to celebrate it. Right. But it's a muscle. And so, I first let myself practice with excuses, and then I took them away because I don't need them. And the people who would be bothered by that, like this friend came around, but had she not, my sense of enough is like, I don't need her in my life. Like I just don't. They don't that there's abundance of friends and people and connections out there. So if somebody wants to be near me, they have to respect the fact that I'm going to make choices that work for me moment by moment. And the more I've done that, again, I think it's just like working out. It's a muscle. The more I've done that, the more people respect me, the clearer I am, and the more I enjoy my life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, whenever you change an energy dynamic, it's going to ruffle feathers, right?
Yes.
Like, because you're no longer energetically aligned with that particular person or that particular situation,
Yes.
right? So there's going to be some moments of discomfort. But I think what we can't predict is what it feels like to be in full alignment. Because once you know that, you're like, oh, this is it, right? And then you can't go back.
Yes. And it's so freeing. Like that's the word that keeps striking me as you're talking, is there's this delight and freedom that comes with that internal orientation to my own enoughness, to my own choices, to designing my life in a way that works for me moment by moment by moment. It is so radically empowering in a way that I think, again, we don't realize because we're so used to that old paradigm.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So I know we were talking for a long time here and I could keep talking, but I want to wrap up our conversation with a quote, and I might not be paraphrasing this exactly, but in your book, you talk about life is too short to hold back. Right? Like,
yep.
Talk to me a little bit about that one. Cause that is my mantra for sure. Right.
Well, again, I'll say current state. So, I've said this a couple of times now, but like I'm allergic to experts. Like I'm not an expert. I am somebody who's on the journey learning all the time. Right. So the area that I've been leaning into is just being unapologetic. Right. And that's where I think about is there is so much adventure to be had. There's so much to create. There's so many interesting people to meet, et cetera. Like holding back is just not even interesting anymore. It was really interesting for a period of time when I was so self-conscious of what other people thought of me and me measuring myself against their standards, their desires, et cetera. But it isn't. We realize life is precious. There are only so many moments. When you start to count them, there aren't that many, right? And so again, the opportunity I have is to either keep going through that rut and routine over and over and over again, or I get to be unleashed, unapologetic, try a whole bunch of
Mm.
stuff. And that's where, for me, this season of life has been the most freeing. Like if you had told me, mid to late 50s, I'd be starting a wonderful adventure that's the best I've had, I would have thought you're out of your mind, right?
Yeah.
But I am
Same.
excited for what's next. I'm excited for the years to come in those kinds of ways. And again, I don't think you need to be older to do it. I think, some young people are very good at it, but I get to go out there and have an adventure of all kinds of sorts. And that's my desire. And so for, again, when I look at that fast forward to end of days and I realize how short that time is, it gives me more fuel to just say, why not? Who cares? Why would I hold myself back? Right. And to let myself really go.
Yeah. And again, that comes back to just giving ourselves permission to honor the things that we have or the things that we feel or the desires that we have, because often it's like, we have a desire or something that we want to do. And then we do that. Well, who am I to do that? Right. Like,
yep.
Or whatever. But like being able to just be like, rather than who am I to do that? Like, what if I just tried? Like, what if I just started going down that road? Like, again, unattached to the outcome, like the sense of freedom, the sense of empowerment. Right.
Yeah. And I do think that detaching from the outcome is so essential in a way I don't think I realized before, because that is the not enough. Like not enough is weaving into there some expectation that isn't ours, it's the world's. It's a system that we have, been birthed into, a family system, a corporate system, a whatever, a social system. And so that one has all kinds of ways of measuring our choices. But the real freedom to detach from that outcome is like, it is, no, I just get to. I get to do it, and by the way, like people will ask, I remember even this when the book first came out, somebody was asking me like, well, what are your goals on sales and da-da-da. And I'm not saying people can't have book sale goals. Amen all day long. It just wasn't what I did it for. It was a labor of love for me.
Right.
And I literally I got to practice saying none, no goals, no agenda, no launch plan, nothing. This is a labor of love. I love to do it. I can't wait to talk about it. And I get to see where it goes. That's what my choice, right? There's other things I might do in a different way, but that gets to be my answer. Because I'm so uninterested in those old things. I mean, I've done marketing, I've done operations, I've done all those kinds of things. I'm like, boring. There's a whole wild adventure of life out there. And, if I paid attention to that, goodness, that would be so limiting to what I do.
Yeah. To those of you listening, I mean, and I know that every single soul, there is not a woman on this planet that doesn't have her own flavor of not enoughness, whatever that looks like. Like it is born in our DNA and propagated throughout our entire lives. To those of you listening, I encourage you to go pick up this book. We'll get Barbara to tell us where we can get it. It was for me like the dose of inspiration that I needed, and really a permission slip to just like be. Right.
Okay, Jennifer, I'm quoting you on that. I love it. A permission slip. I'm using that for myself.
But it really was. It was just like bringing me back to that. Oh yeah, I get to. I can. Right. Like I don't have to. I can. It's just like, oh wow, yeah. It's like it almost to the point where it's like, oh, it's that simple.
Yeah.
Like this thing that I had complicated and, had all of this like systematic analysis around. It's like, oh, really? You just get to.
Well, and I think that complicated is what we do with our systems in order to kind of keep women disempowered and small. And that's where I do think it's a radical thing to say. And I'm stealing that permission slip. I think to give ourselves, write our own permission slip to go out and play and create and do all the wild things. I mean, that's what it was for me. Again, it wasn't like something, I have this idea for a book and I'm going to craft it. I'm going to outline it. Like I didn't. It just kept coming. These life experiences kept coming. But talking about it gives me more permission, right? To remember, to empower, et cetera. And I think the more we can do it for each other, like when a woman draws a boundary or when a woman makes a choice for something or when she does something that we think is damn illogical, to just a high 10, honey.
Exactly. And also too, like every time we give ourselves a permission slip, there is a woman somewhere watching and we just gave her the same permission slip as well. Right. Like if she,
when I did the one woman show last year, in the program, what I wrote in there was, what my hope is for everybody who is sitting in the audience is that you look at this and go, oh my gosh, I could do that, or I could do whatever it is, fill in the blank. And my invitation to the people in the audience is go do it. Like it was one of the most empowering freedom kind of things I did because it was so outrageous, right? And it's like once you do something like that, it's like the fuel is lit, right? So even when you see something that you think, oh, I'm a better writer than they are, great, go do it. Go write the book, go perform the thing, go try the new client, go whatever, because why not?
Why not? Oh, this has been such a great conversation. Like to those of you listening again, I can't say this enough. Go pick up the book, go read it. I hope you find it as inspiring as I did. Tell us a little bit, Barbara, about where we can find the book and where people can find you and your work.
Sure. So they can go to beenough.com, and that's a landing page on my website that has links to where they can buy the book, but it also has a little weekly inspiration you can sign up for. That's just a tiny little, like, I get them because they're love notes to myself that remind us of like these points and what's important. So beenough.com.
Okay.
And again, if you're looking for it on, a Barnes & Noble or an Amazon or any of those kinds of things, you have to look for Enough by Barbara Burgess because there's a number of Enough books out there.
Okay. I will make sure that all that gets in the show notes. Thank you for having this conversation. And to those of you listening, if you liked what you heard today, the biggest compliment that you could give us is to pass this episode on to a friend, a sister, a coworker, anybody that you think. And honestly, this episode is meant for all women, so just share it with everybody you know. Share this episode because we need to be, all of us need to be giving ourselves a whole lot more permission. Like, first of all, to just be who we are, right? Like in full acceptance of who we are, and permission to do the things that feel fulfilling, inspiring, uplifting to us, right? And then if you also want to give this episode a rating or review, that would be fantastic too. So until next time. Thanks for listening to the Old Chicks No Shit podcast. If you like what you heard, the greatest compliment you could give us would be to comment below and subscribe. Or better yet, you could share this episode with a friend, a relative, or somebody you think could get something out of it. And remember, midlife is not the beginning of the end. It's simply the beginning of your kick-ass next chapter.